very case involving the nightclub shooting with J-Lo, and he's beaten those charges. So here's someone with essentially unlimited means, reportedly worth $1 billion. So he's going to fight this all the way.
Diddy is friends with a lot of famous people, or has been over the years. And, you know, the feds say to parties over many, many years. And he rubbed elbows with the rich and famous at award shows, in the recording studio, and of course, at his legendary parties. And I want to be clear, just because someone crossed paths with Combs or attended one of his white parties, or maybe even took a photo with him, that doesn't mean that person committed a crime. And I'm certainly not saying that. The indictment centers on sex trafficking involving one victim at point, Catherine, Combs' longtime girlfriend.
Amber walked in really concerned about the loose skin that she had from having her children. She had a lot of questions about how we were going to.
By now, you know that Ventura filed a bombshell civil suit against Combs last November, claiming she endured years of physical and sexual abuse at his hands. Combs settled that suit the very next day. Other suits from other people followed, and Combs has denied the misconduct alleged in all of them. But the indictment is different. It's alleging serious crimes to which Combs has pleaded not guilty. The indictment claims Ventura was forced to participate in freak-offs, days-long sex parties, and I hesitate to call them parties because that makes it sound fun, where she was forced to have sex with male prostitutes and fed drugs to keep her compliant. The freak-offs went on so long sometimes that participants were often given IV fluids, according to the U.S. attorney, to recover. Can you imagine? The U.S. had talked about these freak-offs when announcing the indictment.
As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers, some of whom he transported or caused to be transported over state lines. Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs, and that Combs hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims, at times by their hair.
The stories we cover here on Crime Fix show you just how scary and unpredictable the world can be. And one of the scariest things that can happen is getting hurt. It's important that you know that if you're ever seriously hurt in an accident, your case could be worth millions. That's where our sponsor and proud partner of Crime Fix, Morgan & Morgan, comes in. The firm has an army of attorneys who will fight for you and for what you deserve. In the past few months, Morgan & Morgan has won some big verdicts, like $12 million in Florida, $26 million in Philly, and $6.8 million in New York. All were much higher than the highest insurance company offer. Even if your case isn't worth 7 figures, start a claim and get the money that you deserve. Seeing if you have a case can be done in 8 clicks or less, and you can do it all from just your phone. Give it a try. Start a claim at forthepeople.com/crimefix. Now, Ventura, according to the U.S. attorney, was trying to flee one of those freak-offs when Combs beat her in a hotel in March of 2016 in Los Angeles. Combs is accused of videotaping the freak-offs and then using those tapes to blackmail the people who took part. It makes you wonder, who is on those tapes, besides maybe Cassie Ventura and male sex workers? Are there rich and famous people who were a part of these freak-offs, or were they Diddy's dirty little secret? The feds don't seem to think they were that secret.
We are not done. This investigation is ongoing, and I encourage anyone with information about this case to come forward and to do it quickly. Anyone with information can call 1-877-4-HSI-TIP. I want to express my deep appreciation for the victims and witnesses who have used their voices and helped bring this criminal conduct to light. We would not be here without them.
Now, let's say for a moment, hypothetically speaking, that there are rich, famous, and powerful people on the freak-off videos. What could that mean? Would those people be charged? And are there people more powerful than Combs on those videos? Is he the top of this alleged conspiracy, or could there be someone else at the top? Sources have likened Combs to Jeffrey Epstein, and we know Epstein had a lot of powerful friends, but no one else was charged in his case, except for Ghislaine Maxwell. Were the rich and famous part of these parties that the feds say were illegal? And how many people were involved in these freak-offs? The U.S. attorney says Combs' staff arranged all of them.
And Combs has been charged with RICO conspiracy. He used his business and employees of that business and other close associates to get his way. Those individuals allegedly included high-ranking supervisors in the business, personal assistants, security staff, and household staff. The indictment alleges that those individuals facilitated the freak-offs. They booked the hotel rooms and stocked them with the supplies, including drugs, baby oil, personal lubricant, extra linens, and lighting. When the hotel rooms got damaged, they helped clean it up. They arranged for victims and commercial sex workers to travel for the freak-offs, and they delivered large quantities of cash to Combs to pay for the commercial sex workers. The indictment also alleges that they helped Combs cover up his crimes. During the March 2016 incident at the LA hotel that I mentioned earlier.
So according to the U.S. attorney, Combs' employees would exactly who attended these parties, these freak-offs, how they were arranged, and who's on the videos. But with the U.S. attorney saying that the investigation is ongoing, are people that might be featured on the videos seized from Combs' home, will they be considered witnesses or possible defendants? And what else has Cassie told the feds that can be backed up by video evidence? We don't know, but it's a valid question. Combs is in custody, being held without bail, and his attorney says Combs maintains he's committed no crimes.
The fight continues. We're not giving up by a long shot. I told Mr. Combs I'm going to try and get his case to trial as quickly as possible. I'm going to try and minimize the amount of time he spends in very, very difficult and I believe inhumane housing conditions in the special housing unit of the Metropolitan Detention Facility. And I'm going to do everything that I can to move his case as quickly as possible.
Now, Combs' attorney, Mark Agnifilo, acknowledged that there will be a lot of electronic evidence that he will have to go through.
I understand that the government has a great amount of electronic devices that they have to download and provide to me, but everything's on the government's timetable. Nothing's on the defendant's timetable, and they're going to have to accommodate me and him and give us a quick trial, and I'm going to be pushing for that.
All I wanted was my name. Tina Turner.
Tina, the Tina Turner musical. The mega hit comes direct from Broadway. See her triumphant story and be ecstatically blown away. Every
resolve is the same. He believes he's innocent. I believe he's innocent. And we're going to fight this case with all of our might until we don't have to fight any longer.
I want to bring in Nima Rahmani. He's a former federal prosecutor. So Nima, Mark Agnifilo has said that he's going to take this to trial quickly. They are going to fight this. Do you think there's any chance of a plea deal in this case?
And Jeanette, I think a plea deal is very unlikely, and this is why. There's not really any deal to be made. There are minimum mandatories on the drug trafficking charges, 10 years, and the sex trafficking up to 15 years. That's a minimum. And of course, we know the RICO conspiracy carries a potential life sentence. So there's not any deal that Diddy would accept. And he's previously fought criminal charges before in New York State court. Obviously, a very different case involving the nightclub shooting with J-Lo, and he's beaten those charges. So here's someone with essentially unlimited means, reportedly worth $1 billion. So he's going to fight this all the way.
Diddy is friends with a lot of famous people, or at least has been over the years. And, you know, the feds say part of the reason that he made these tapes was to blackmail people, obviously blackmailing the participants, people like Cassie, to keep them in line, according to the indictment. But what about rich and powerful people? Do you think the feds have reams and reams of video, and that there are rich and powerful people we may know, on those videos in the freak-offs?
I do. And I'm here in Hollywood, and Diddy's parties were notorious and one of the worst kept secrets in Hollywood. If I were one of those rich and famous celebrities and I participated in these sex acts, I would be very concerned. I would be talking to a lawyer. At best, I'm a witness. At worst, I'm a co-defendant. And I thought that the feds were actually thinking about potentially charging others. And that's why it took 6 months to arrest and indict Diddy. But it turns out that wasn't the case. But if you believe U.S. Attorney Damian Williams, and I do, in the reports, there are at least 50 witnesses that the feds have spoken to. And I bet that some of those were participants in the sex acts.
Do you see the feds going through those videos and identifying the people in them and seeking them out, in particular, if they are wealthy and famous people, and saying, okay, do you want to be a witness or do you want to be a co-defendant?
I think they are, and I think they should. Obviously, very different case, but one of the criticisms of the Jeffrey Epstein investigation is that the rich and famous people that participated in the sex acts were never brought to justice. And even Epstein himself got a sweetheart deal, probably because he was very rich and well connected. So, if there are other celebrities, they shouldn't get a free pass merely because of their wealth or their fame. And, I think that the U.S. Attorney's Office going after Diddy, obviously he's going to be their main target. But if there's other people that were participants, they too should be prosecuted.
Do you think that Diddy, obviously the participants that, they're claiming, the federal prosecutors are, that he was trying to keep the women engaged in this, particularly Cassie, because she's the only victim identified at this point in the indictment, trying to keep her in line and using these tapes to blackmail her and saying, look, I'll expose these if you ever try to leave me, that type of thing. That's what is being alleged. But do you think that there was a bigger purpose here, possibly blackmailing other people in the music industry, other people in Hollywood? Was there something for him to gain from videotaping these things in Hollywood and in the music industry?
There's no question that the video evidence of others participating in sex acts can be used for blackmail or extortion. And obviously, the commercial sex workers, they're victims, but the people that were participating in them, to the extent that they're caught on tape, Diddy would have something over them, something that could embarrass them personally, professionally, and may help further Diddy's career. The irony is all these videos are now going to be used as evidence against Diddy himself. So by trying to gain power in Hollywood and in the music business, he may have provided law enforcement and prosecutors the very evidence that's going to be used to take him down.
One of the things I've been wondering, and a lot of people have kind of speculated about, is, Diddy he's the king of his own kingdom. He was the boss of Combs Global and the other businesses that he ran, but there may be somebody bigger than him. Is there somebody maybe above him? Does he have anything or anyone to offer the government to get himself out of trouble? You said you expect him to take this to trial. You don't expect a plea deal. But, there's all this talk and gossip about whether or not Diddy has things he can offer the government, people in the sex trafficking trade. And of course, he contends he's not guilty and he hasn't committed any crimes. But do you see that? Do you see there being people higher up in the food chain than Diddy that he could tell the government about or give information about?
There's always the possibility that Diddy is going to flip on others. The question is, who could that be? It would really have to be someone very high up, Angela. I'm talking people in Washington, D.C., politicians. There aren't a whole lot of people in the music business or in the movie business that are more famous and well-known than Diddy. But if he did identify many other people or all the other people who participated, that certainly would have some value. It's unlikely, but it's a possibility. Obviously, Diddy would have to turn in a very different direction. But even if he did, I can't imagine any scenario where Diddy gets off with little to no time because of the just egregious nature of these charges.
I don't think that Rusty would be here today if it wasn't for the farmer's dog. He was always a dry kibble dog because that was all we knew growing up. And so I thought the kibble has less preservatives and everything.
We've all seen the video of Diddy beating Cassie Ventura. He apologized for it. So he would still get significant time. And I think that Diddy and his lawyers are trying to go for a home run and to argue that this was all consensual, even if it might have been weird or freaky. So I think that's very likely the direction we go in, but anything is possible.
Let's talk about the guns for a minute. You know, the U.S. attorney made a point to point out these guns and that they had the serial numbers scratched off. Why on earth is Sean Combs keeping guns with serial numbers scratched off in his closet in his home?
And that was very surprising. I was surprised that those weren't charged in the indictment. Now, maybe there was no venue because the guns were in Miami or his home in Los Angeles, and not necessarily RICO predicate acts. But I think the government has a good argument that did he possess the guns? You know, there are some reports that maybe it was his security or security company that possessed them. But when they're in your bedroom, that's possession under the law. So that was very surprising. And we talked about the different ways Diddy controlled the participants or the victims in these sex acts. And obviously, one way could be blackmail or extortion by having the videos, but the other could be just brute force, violence, and intimidation. I think that's what the AR-15s were there for.
Do you expect more to come out of this? Damian Williams said, "We're not done. This is ongoing." And I think a lot of people maybe expected more out of the indictment than the 3 counts. I mean, they're incredibly serious, but we're talking about one victim in this indictment. We're talking about a RICO charge and then the transportation to engage in prostitution charge. So do you expect a superseding indictment with more charges against Sean Combs and then other arrests of people involved in this?
And Jeanette, I'm one of those people that expected more. It was 6 months from the time of the March raids to the time Diddy was arrested. And, you know, I asked myself, what's taking so long? Normally, an arrest happens within days, or certainly no more than weeks after a raid, because you don't want defendants to take off or to try to tamper with witnesses or evidence, which appears to have happened here. So waiting is usually not a good idea. There's also some potential statute of limitations issues because we're talking about some offenses that may have been older. Now, even though the statutes run, they might still be RICO predicate acts, but there's many, many reasons not to wait. And I thought maybe the reason that they were waiting is we're going to see a sweeping 100-page indictment involving lots of people and lots of crimes. And certainly I expected much more than one victim in the indictment. So the answer to that is yes. I don't know what's taking the investigation so long, because Cassie's allegations have been public since at least November. The feds have had plenty of time to talk to witnesses, victims, plaintiffs. I'm sure would want to cooperate. It could potentially help their civil claim. So I do take Damian Williams at his word, and there probably will be a superseding indictment at some point.
Do you think that current employees or past employees of Sean Combs are already cooperating? Or was this Damian Williams last week when announcing the indictment? Was this him giving those people a chance to come forward and to cooperate?
I think both. I think there are people who are cooperating, and people that aren't cooperating should cooperate. And he put up the hotline for the freak-offs for that reason. This is why. I mean, under the law, anyone who participates in a conspiracy and commits overt acts in furtherance of the conspiracy, they're criminally liable for all the crimes committed on furtherance of the conspiracy. So that's my lawyer way of saying if someone helped set up the cameras and the lighting, or they bought the baby oil, or they administered the IVs, they're co-conspirators. So they're theoretically liable for sex trafficking, even though they didn't participate in the sex acts themselves. So they have a lot of exposure, and they absolutely should cooperate, because if they don't, there's always a possibility that they get charged.
So you predict a superseding indictment with more charges against Diddy. And do you expect rich and famous people to be charged?
I think rich and famous people should be charged. It's tough to know what the feds are going to do. Now, some of them might not have a nexus to New York, so it might have to be a Los Angeles case or a Miami case. But really, if there are other participants, for them to get a pass just because they didn't actually contact the sex worker, set it up, threaten them, beat them, I think it's problematic and sends a message that, you know, only those who actually were at the top of the food chain should get prosecuted. And it really creates the perception, right or wrong, that people are getting a pass because of their wealth or their connections.
And, it seems so crazy to me that Sean Combs, if he is indeed found guilty, he provided much of the evidence to convict himself. I mean, I guess that's what happens in cases like this, but the videotapes won't lie.
No question. And that's why I love videotapes as a prosecutor. Like you said, Anjanette, people can lie, witnesses can lie, but videotape doesn't lie. And, I mentioned the Cass CEO from 2016, why it was so powerful. Up until that moment, Diddy, through his lawyers, denied everything. When that video came out, he came out on social media and he gave an apology. I thought it wasn't a wholehearted apology. And I think he minimized his conduct, but he had to, because everyone saw that video and how disturbing it was. And I think the evidence in this case that convicts Diddy will likely be the overwhelming video evidence as much as the witness testimony, because some of the witnesses may be victims and they may have a financial motive, because some of them obviously have filed those civil lawsuits against Diddy.
I want to ask you about Christina Coram, his former chief of staff. He called her his right hand. She was with him for years. How much trouble could she be in?
Coram is in a lot of trouble. She is probably the one, at least if you look at the allegations in the civil lawsuits, that has the most exposure. Diddy, of course, called her his right hand, and some of the lawsuits, I believe Little Rod's lawsuit especially, named her as a defendant, and there's some very damning allegations against her that she had a fanny pack and would provide the drugs to Diddy and the sex workers. She would arrange for the commercial sex workers to be flown in. So again, those are just allegations in a civil lawsuit. But I think of all the individuals that work for Diddy, I think she appears to be the closest to these freak-offs and the one that's probably the closest to being indicted if she doesn't cooperate.
Do you have a feeling on whether or not she probably is cooperating already?
I think she should cooperate if she's not. And if she's not cooperating, that's the person I lean on the most. When I was a prosecutor, the two best sources of information for me always were exes, husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, and employees, current and former. They know where the bodies are buried. So I would contact Christina Coram if I were prosecuting this case. I'd have her come in with her lawyer, and I would explain that she has significant criminal exposure if we decide to charge her, and that she should cooperate to save herself. And very likely she would.
Do you think Brendan Paul, the guy who is the alleged drug mule, do you think he's already cooperating?
I think he should be cooperating as well. It's so tough to know, because obviously those proffers, the U.S. Attorney's Office, those are confidential. And even grand jury proceedings where witnesses come and testify, they're supposed to be secret. Now, of course, there's many good reporters that will stay outside the courthouse, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and kind of see who's coming in and out. But yeah, Paul, Coram, those are the two most likely people that have been named so far. Obviously, in Paul's case, he was arrested as Diddy's alleged drug mule. Those are two very easy targets for cooperation.
Nima Rahmani, former federal prosecutor, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Anjanette.
And that's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next time.
So here's the thing about Bernie Moreno. Ohio already voted to protect abortion rights, and this guy would completely ignore us.
Bernie Moreno supports a national ban on abortion and said he's 100% against abortion with no exceptions.
Thicker, fuller hair starts with Hims. Discover sprays, chews, and serum made with.
Sean Diddy Combs isn't the only one in the family facing some serious accusations. And while the rapper has been criminally charged and arrested, his sons have been named in recent lawsuits. But could those allegations lead to more charges for the Combs family? We're taking a closer look with criminal defense attorney Natalie Whittingham-Burrell. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Well, it's not really surprising that a lot of people have been speaking out since the arrest and indictment of Sean Diddy Combs on federal sex trafficking and racketeering charges. But now that includes the woman behind a lawsuit against his son, Christian Combs. So Sean Combs was indicted in federal court last week. He's going to be going up against the formidable prosecutors of the Southern District of New York. And until then, he's locked up at what's called the MDC, the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York. And this is a jail which has housed other celebrity inmates at times. It's been plagued with issues like unsanitary conditions, fights between inmates. There's a status conference for his case scheduled for October 10th. But as Combs now faces these criminal charges, there is a separate legal team that is dealing with the multiple civil lawsuits that are pending against him. And one of those complaints was filed by a woman named Grace O'Markey. So O'Markey was apparently a steward working aboard a yacht that was rented by Sean Combs in December of 2022 for a holiday celebration with his family, when she claims she was sexually assaulted by Christian Combs. And within weeks of Sean Combs' homes being raided back in March by federal agents, O'Markey filed a civil complaint against Christian and named his father, Sean Combs, in the suit as well for allegedly facilitating this assault to occur. Now, through her attorney, O'Markey put out a statement after Sean Combs was arrested saying, quote, "The long-awaited federal arrest of Sean Combs is the first step for our clients receiving justice. We leave the criminal aspect of this case in the hands of the people and justice system. As for the civil cases, we await our time for the facts to reveal themselves and seek the justice our clients deserve." It goes on to say, "We also anticipate more victims coming forward. We knew this was coming. The evidence is very clear, and it was only a matter of time. This is an important step towards justice for all of Mr. Combs' victims, including my clients. Justice will prevail." Hey, by the way, we really appreciate you guys coming to us for our Sean Combs coverage. We plan to continue to bring you updates on this story. And look, the reason we're able to do this is because not only of the support that we get from you guys, but also from our sponsors. And if I can, I want to call out one right now, Upside. So this is so cool. Upside is a free app that helps you get cash back on daily essentials like gas and groceries. Real cash back, money that appears in your Upside app that you can transfer straight into your bank account. Just the other day, I used Upside to find a gas station. I claimed an offer. I pay with my credit card at the pump, follow the steps on the app to get cash back. And you can use Upside at all different kinds of places, including restaurants, convenience stores. So to find what you could earn, click the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on screen and use our code SIDEBAR, extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. I hope you can check it out.
So today's the day. I've got my RTA mock system and Coyote appliances. And they did tell me it was only going to take a few minutes. And I got to say, they were right. The big old box came from the shipping company. We pulled the front and back panels out, lined them up parallel. My wife, Allie, and I, we pulled together all of the pieces. That amazing system, these center pieces, just lock them all together. It was really easy to snap together. And that's a rock solid connection. I've been cooking for 30 years in hotels and restaurants, on location, on television. This thing is rock solid and it looks really sexy.
So what is the status of the civil case and what impact could it have, if any, on charges that Sean Combs now faces? Well, to discuss that, I want to bring in criminal defense attorney Natalie Whittingham to talk more about this. Natalie, thank you so much for coming here on Sidebar. Appreciate it.
Hi, Jesse. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So first, let me start from a basic point of law. How much do civil cases that might be alleging similar conduct as criminal charges, how much does a result in a civil case affect a criminal case?
Not at all. So it doesn't affect the criminal case. The jury in a criminal case is supposed to remain fair and unbiased and only consider the facts that they're hearing in the courtroom. As far as the judge is concerned, if the judge is going to be imposing a sentence because the jury found the person guilty, the judge should be considering what happened in the courtroom. And usually they don't take into consideration civil liability. I've heard many judges say, I know that there's a concurrent case in the civil courts. We're going to let that play out. This is separate and apart from that. And the reason being is that it's a different burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt versus preponderance of the evidence. And so for that reason, you can't really let what happens in the civil context infiltrate the criminal context. because the true fact is determining something different.
Before I make these, because there could be overlap here, there is the possibility that, and I'll get to this in a second, whether or not Grace O'Markey may be cooperating with federal investigators, whether any piece of that evidence could come to the federal case in a second. But what did you make of the statement from Grace O'Markey's legal team after Sean Combs was arrested?
I see. So what they're saying basically is that this is opening up a it's kind of opening up for more victims to come forward. And I think that's really what it's all about as far as the civil case is concerned. So more people might feel emboldened, like, look, there is a criminal case here. This means that what happened to me is valid and I am free to speak out about it, right? They'd always been waiting for it. I guess, you know, if the feds had investigated and nothing had come of it, people might have felt less inclined to come forward. So as far as emboldening potential victims, yes, the criminal case would impact the psyche of a person who's truly a victim of Sean Combs. Yes.
Let me ask you the statement where they're saying, you know, this isn't a surprise. We expected this to happen. Now, that could be because we were all seeing what was happening play out. We knew that there were raids. There was reports about a grand jury being impaneled. There was reports that Sean Combs was the target of investigation. Do you think that we're not surprised because we saw everything everybody else said? Or do you think we're not surprised because Grace O'Markey may be cooperating with the government as a witness in the federal criminal case?
$72 a month.
That's it.
But that's crazy.
How much are you paying for your auto insurance?
I would say like $50 a month.
Right, I see what you mean. It could be that. There's really no way to know whether she's cooperating. Because like with Cassie, you saw the details that Cassie alleged in her lawsuit being played out in the actual formal indictment and the letters that were written by the state to try and encourage the court to hold on to Sean Combs and not release him. Whereas I don't see a lot of specific detail overlap with what O'Markey is alleging, other than the fact that what she alleges confirms and supports what Cassie has been saying. It's interesting. I think what she says, O'Markey, more confirms and report what's in the Little Rod lawsuit, which is these things that were happening on yachts, which isn't really detailed in the criminal case.
And I'm going to get to that connection in a minute. I guess just more generally speaking, and this is interesting because the way the prosecutors filed these charges against Sean Combs, there's not a lot of independent sexual assault claims, right? They've really focused it more on these freak-offs, these sexual performances, and the idea that the allegations are that he centered these sexual performances that were directed by Combs, that he would force people to be a part of them, he would transport people to be a part of them, he would drug people to engage in these freak-offs. And do you think that's strategic, that the prosecutors are not saying, we know that he's facing a number of sexual assault lawsuits, or his son might be facing a sexual lawsuit. We're not going to include that as kind of separate charges, or even evidence of the freak-offs, because what she's alleging, and we'll get to what she's alleging, she's not alleging a freak-off happened with her, right? And I'm thinking that federal prosecutors are very specific for a reason here, right?
Right. They're very specific for a reason because, first of all, you made a very good distinction. What Miss O'Markey is alleging is against Christian Combs, Sean Combs' son, Diddy's son, not against Diddy himself as far as the actual essay is concerned. However, what it does do is kind of lay a foundation for the context in which they're saying these freak-offs happen. And so I think by leaving their indictment more general, they have left it open for more evidence to be introduced at trial, because they could easily say, well, this is relevant to the environment in which these freak-offs took place. This is why people would be afraid to come forward if they're facing the threat of, financial ruin, sexual assault, or being shunned in the entertainment community. And so for all of those reasons, even though this isn't specifically named in the criminal case, these actions by O'Markey, which makes complete sense because Christian Combs is not a defendant in the criminal case, it certainly does add to context. And so now I could see now on the defense side them wanting to do something akin to a bill of particulars, where they want to get more information from how actually the prosecution intends to prove this case, because they've left it so open that pretty much any of those bad acts could.
And so you're kind of laying the groundwork for how possibly Grace O'Markey could testify in a federal case, but there's a lot of things that need to happen before that. So I want to talk a little bit more about this. So we have Christian King Combs, 26-year-old model rapper, third oldest son of Sean Combs, who's one of 3 children that Combs shares with the late model Kim Porter. She died in 2018. And we go back to the raids that happened in Los Angeles and Miami back in March. Combs' sons, specifically in LA, Christian and Justin, they were handcuffed and they were led out of the home as investigators from Homeland Security went to collect the evidence. 30-year-old Justin is Combs' oldest biological son, who he had with a fashion designer named Misa Hilton. And Justin's mother shared a video from the Los Angeles raid on her Instagram page. And the footage, which appears to come from security cameras around the home, has been edited and sped up in places. And she writes, quote, "The overzealous and overtly militarized force used against my sons Justin and Christian is deplorable. If these were the sons of a non-Black celebrity, they would not have been handled with the same aggression." Christian, by the way, celebrated his birthday 1 week after the raids, posting photos of his lavish celebrations on his Instagram story. And he also posted this to his story, "Stop with the blue cap emoji." Cap is slang for lying. And then on April 4th, Grace O'Markey filed her civil lawsuit in Los Angeles Superior Court. So that timeline I find is really interesting, Natalie. You have the raids. There have been lawsuits that have already.
This is what 5 pounds of body fat looks like. Want to lose this and more? Keep watching. Have you seen this guy? The one that says stop doing, yeah, I might want to listen to him.
Discussed either 2 of these sons, but then her lawsuit comes after the raids, after everyone saw them in handcuffs. So what do you make of the remarks of Misa Hilton? What do you make of the fact of what Sean Combs' son posted on Instagram, and also the timing of the Grace O'Markey lawsuit?
Yeah, so first of all, about Misa Hilton's statement, all I have to say is cry me a river, to say that this has anything to do with race when Bernie Madoff's entire family was decimated by his, grift and Ponzi scheme that he was running on the New York elite. His sons were raided as well in public, and they were grown men, just like how Misa Hilton's son is a grown man, and all of Diddy's sons are adult men, 26 and up into their 30s. And so, unfortunately, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. But when law enforcement is doing a raid on allegations of sex trafficking, gun ownership, and moving drugs across state lines, they're going to come in with force, given the nature of the case. And I'll say one last thing on Misa Hilton. She didn't have anything to say for the alleged victims of Sean Combs' crimes, in particular Cassie, where he is on video severely beating her. So the video there's never been a statement or outcry by Misa Hilton or any of Sean Combs' paramours that have said that they feel any sympathy for Cassie or what she went through. So again, cry me a river. As far as Justin or whichever son having his birthday party immediately after the raid, I think it exemplifies the type of bubble that these people live in that allowed for these crimes allegedly to go on for so long without being checked by the powers that be. Because who else could be raided by the federal government and the very next week be having a lavish birthday party, right? That comes from a certain level of financial privilege that they have that places them outside of the paradigm of what everyday people like my clients have to deal with. As to your third question about the timing of the lawsuit, I think it goes right along with what you asked me about at the top, which was her attorney's statement. These types of things where you see that the government is intervening, it's almost like before that, a lot of victims of crimes are under a type of gaslighting by the public, by society, by their own family members, that they shouldn't try to hurt this successful man who's done so much for his community. Because remember, he's also a philanthropist. He's also a mogul. He's also a leader and that people really looked up to. And I'm sure that many people were discouraged from speaking out against him. And now that he has been federally indicted, some of that armor is gone and people probably feel more comfortable with coming forward.
So let's get into this civil lawsuit. We did a sidebar on this in the past, but I kind of want to reiterate. So O'Markey says that she had worked as a steward on the yacht that Sean Combs had rented. She was in charge of providing food and drinks for a 12-hour period. She was 25 years old at the time. And she believes and claimed that the alcohol on that yacht had been laced with drugs because she says women would have one drink, then almost immediately pass out or start falling over. And again, if you go back to the indictment, there were allegations that Combs had been drugging people during the course of these freak-offs. But Omarky says that Christian Combs had been staying at a villa on the shore, but then would come onto the yachts on the evenings to party. And on December 28th, 2022, Christian, according to her, reportedly arrives very intoxicated and pressured Omarky to take shots of tequila. So she does, and Christian allegedly tries to get her to drink more in the yacht's makeshift recording studio. And she claims that Christian kissed her neck and face as he groped her legs, breasts, and private areas. Now, Omarky reportedly told Christian, "Excuse me, you don't touch my legs like that. I'll move my legs where I want to. If I want to do this, then I will. You don't touch my legs like that." Omarky then says that she told Christian she couldn't stay with him unless it was approved by a supervisor. So her complaint says that she knew all of them would be asleep by this time, and this was just kind of a ruse to get out of the situation. Well, she claims, what did Christian do? He said, "Okay, who can I talk to? I'm going to say I requested you right now." Omarky then says that she responded with, "Well, you can take your hand off my ass for the first thing." Now, Omarky says that she tried to go back to work, but Christian found her again, wanted her to find him a place to sleep for the night. So she took him to the cinema room of the yacht, and that's when she claims Christian kept her from leaving, groped her, took off all of his clothes, and tried to force her to perform oral sex on him.
I don't think that Rusty would be here today if it wasn't for the farmer's dog. He was a dry kibble dog because that was all we knew.
And she says unable to find him off until someone came in. Now, the lawsuit goes on to say that Omarky told the yacht captain what had happened the next day, and not only did he not believe her, that he didn't do any sort of investigation. She says that the captain even retaliated against her for months after the alleged assault before firing her in May of 2023. The civil complaint also includes photos of apparent bruises on Omarky's arms, which she says were caused by Christian Combs. And in this civil suit, she accuses him of assault, battery, sexual assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Now, Natalie, before I get into the allegations surrounding Sean Combs, because he is a named defendant too, what do you make of those allegations?
Well, I think it's a very serious allegation, and one that's interesting for the corroboration that it could or could not have. Her employer would be liable for not protecting her after she makes an outcry that she's been assaulted on their yacht. And so I'm not sure if they would be willing to come forward and corroborate what she said. But I do understand that the evidence also includes a recording from the recording studio of her resisting Mr. Combs. And so I think what this lays out is something that many people, or women in particular, are familiar with, which is sexual harassment in the workplace, especially in these industries that have softer HR, such as entertainment, travel, management, hotel, hospitality, those types of employments where you come into contact with wealthy individuals who feel like they can do basically whatever they want because they paid for it. And so nothing that she's saying sounds outside the realm of possibility. It's just a matter of corroboration. And if what she says is proven to be true, that is physical assault, sexual assault, harassment, everything of that nature. And so we'll see what the evidence shows when they do the discovery process.
Do you think this puts Christian in the crosshairs of federal prosecutors in any way?
That's interesting because it depends on if there's more than one person. That the reason that the feds are involved with Sean P. Diddy Combs is because these things cross state lines and international lines. So, for example, if it was just I'm in Detroit and I have a girl come over from across the street and I sexually assault her, that would be within the state jurisdiction. But if I have a girl pay her to come from Oklahoma to Detroit, for example, and sexually assault her or pay her to do that, that's trafficking across state lines. And now I'm bringing in drugs and guns and things like that. That's what makes it federal. So I'm not sure if it would qualify for federal review, especially because this was out on the water. We've got maritime laws and things like that. I'm not sure if this would be a federal case, but if more people come forward about Christian Combs and it becomes a pattern and it crosses state lines, then possibly there could be some type of federal intrusion into his case.
Now, in terms of Sean Combs, father here, he, in this lawsuit, in a way is accused of aiding and abetting Christian's behavior because as having premises liability, that he was the leaseholder of the yacht, meaning that he had a duty to keep people on that property safe from injuries. And she's seeking unspecified damages in this lawsuit. So, Natalie, could that aspect of this case factor into Sean Combs' criminal case in any way? I know I'm being repetitive, but I do think it's kind of an interesting aspect when we talk about what his liability would be here in this civil suit and whether or not it could factor in any way in the federal suit.
I don't want to live 9 to 5, paycheck to paycheck.
I wish on this 20 years ago.
This is a hidden gem people about.
You might be closer to
the federal criminal case.
More than likely, because this is a bit removed from the allegations of the freak-offs, right? This is not sexual activity by Sean Combs, but by Christian Combs. That, like I said before, there would be a motion by the defense to exclude any reference to this as being irrelevant, and they would likely be successful in that. But as far as his actual personal liability for premises liability, and also, I guess, because he would be responsible for Christian Combs, unless Christian is in his employ, I don't think him being his son necessarily makes Sean Combs liable. Now, if it's one thing like Sean did the drugs, Sean P. Diddy Combs created the environment and encouraged him to do this, I don't potentially, but where you really see the liability would be with her actual employer, the owner of the yacht and the company who staffed her on the yacht, not actually investigating and protecting her and allowing illicit drugs to be used on their yacht. They would likely be more liable than Sean Combs is as the actual owner of the property. And because it would be different if she was just some random person.
Right.
She worked for the boat. She worked for the people that own the yacht. And so I think that's really where the liability is, not so much with Sean Combs. I could be wrong, but I don't see the liability there for him as much as I do for Christian and the yacht owner. Now, again, if Sean is in his father's employ, and the father creates the environment, with his companies going place to place doing things, but this was in a personal venture, then I don't see the liability as much.
I mean, we kind of did another sidebar on this, but like, if you look at the criminal case where there's racketeering or criminal enterprise, and there was a lot of people involved in this and facilitating these freak-offs, you don't know if one of those people could potentially be Christian Combs that they're talking about, even though, again, the idea of the freak-off isn't mentioned in this lawsuit. It does make you wonder who else could be in the crosshairs, who else is connected to this, what is that connection? We checked with the court to get the latest on this lawsuit and how it's progressing, and a case management conference when the attorneys and the judge get together to give each other kind of updates on the case and schedule future hearings. It was originally scheduled for August 5th. Back to December 10th, so we'll continue to follow that. One final thing I want to end on this, and this is something that you mentioned before, is that Little Rod Jones. So I did another sidebar on who may be cooperating with the government right now in the federal case against Sean Combs. And he, I believe, was the first person to bring up this idea of the racketeering enterprise. And, I don't know if he's cooperating with the government. I don't know if he's a star witness. I don't know if they're basing some of their charges on his claims. But what I can tell you is that O'Markey's allegations could very well be bolstered by Little Rod. Because he claims that he was in the recording studio on the boat.
So here's the thing about Bernie Moreno. Ohio abortion rights, I would completely ignore us.
Bernie Moreno supports a national abortion and said he's 100% against abortion with no exceptions.
And there was definitely certain elements that we had to have. We have the garbage out here, we have a burner, we have 2 types of barbecues. Just being attacked.
When Christian Combs and O'Markey came in and reportedly action between the two of them, and says that he saw when she was touched inappropriately. Now, you and I spoke previously about this, and when you think about O'Markey's claims and when you think about Little Rodney Jones, You are a little bit skeptical of that lawsuit, the Little Rod Jones lawsuit, correct?
There's just some credibility issues there, right? Because again, like I say, with every case, we'll see what happens when it goes to court and what the discovery process actually bears out. But with Little Rod, first of all, the style of the lawsuit just threw me off with the little pictures of people, as though this was some type of storybook instead of a very serious lawsuit with very serious allegations. In addition, what Little Rod was alleging was that he, as a grown man, was being groomed into homosexuality, which I think is a ridiculous basis for a lawsuit. Now, if someone is physically touching you against your will, you have every single right to sue for sexual assault, harassment, assault, whatever you want to sue for. But to say that someone is trying to make you gay, it just sounded absolutely ridiculous to me. In addition, he was alleging that Diddy was participating in sex trafficking with underage girls because Little Rod himself would go out and get girls from clubs and casinos like that and bring them back to the mansion, the yacht, wherever it is, or with Sean P. Diddy Combs, and that Diddy was not checking the IDs of these girls, but he was the one who got the girls, according to Little Rod. So any lawsuit in which my client is admitting to potentially participating in sex trafficking of underage girls, I'm already skeptical right there, the quality of the evidence of that lawsuit. And then there was just an outright factual misstatement, which was that Diddy had shown Lil Rod a pornographic video of the rapper named T.I., and that was absolutely debunked afterwards. So there were some outright falsehoods in the lawsuit, which they later on tried to, with the amended, try to make it seem like it was a mistake, but that was too much of a misrepresentation for me to take full credibility. However, would I at someone who wrote it because they wanted to cash in on what was going on, who actually participated in the bad behavior per their own admission, actually did see, absolutely would believe that. So his lawsuit doesn't really make me disbelieve O'Markey, I think you said her name was. It doesn't make me disbelieve. Okay, it doesn't make me disbelieve O'Markey. It's just that internal to the Little Rod lawsuit, there are actual misstatements of fact in there that make me not believe him as much as I would believe her.
And that's fair. That's fair. I mean, he's made a number of allegations. In fact, in terms of Justin Combs, he says that Justin was involved in soliciting the sex workers for his father's parties, including underage girls, and says that he would participate in the so-called freak-offs. And I'll tell you, I did think it was interesting, just to put a bow on this, because we're running out of time, is I thought it was very interesting that in this criminal indictment, there were no allegations of minors or underage girls. And even though that seemed to be a very pertinent theme in Little Rodney Jones' lawsuit, we didn't see that there. Might come down the bucket, might see it in a superseding indictment. Maybe they didn't believe his claims. Maybe there's not enough evidence to substantiate that. Maybe they want to focus on this aspect of the case. We'll see. But look, I thought it's really interesting. And if Grace O'Markey decides is actually a part of this criminal case in any way as a witness, she's going to be questioned about this lawsuit and cross-examined about it. Say that she has a motive to see
whichever son having his birthday party immediately after the rape exemplifies the type of bubble that these people live in that allow crimes to go on for so long without being checked by the powers that be. Because who else could be rated by the federal government and be having a lavish birthday party, right? That comes from a certain level of financial privilege that they have that places them outside of the paradigm of what everyday people like my clients have to deal with. As to your third question about the timing of the lawsuit, I think it goes right along with what you asked me about at the top, which was her attorney's statement. These types of things where you see that the government is intervening, it's almost like before that, a lot of victims of crimes are under a
$72 a month.
That's it.
That's crazy.
How much are you paying for your auto insurance?
I would say like $150.
Maybe over.
Type of gaslighting by society, by their own family members, that they shouldn't try to hurt this successful man who's done so much for his community. Because remember, he's also a philanthropist. He's also a mogul. He's also a leader and that people really looked up to. And I'm sure that many people were discouraged from speaking out against him. And now that he has been federally indicted, some of that armor is gone and people probably feel more comfortable with coming forward.
So let's get into this civil lawsuit. We did a sidebar on this in the past, but I kind of want to reiterate. So Omarky says that she had worked as a steward on the yacht that Sean Combs had rented. She was in charge of providing food and drinks for a 12-hour period. She was 25 years old at the time. And she believes and claimed that the alcohol on that yacht had been laced with drugs, because she says women would have one drink, then almost immediately pass out or start falling over. And again, if you go back to the indictment, there were allegations that Combs had been drugging people during the course of these freak-offs. But Omarky says that Christian Combs had been staying at a villa on the shore, but then would come onto the yachts on the evenings to party. And on December 28th, 2022, Christian, according to her, reportedly arrives very intoxicated and pressured Omarky to take shots of tequila. So she does, and Christian allegedly tries to get her to drink more in the yacht's makeshift recording studio. She claims Christian kept her from leaving, groped her, took off all of his clothes, and tried to force her to perform oral sex on him. And she says that she was unable to fight him off until someone came in. Now, the lawsuit goes on to say that Omarky told the yacht captain what had happened the next day, and not only did he not believe her, that he didn't do any sort of investigation. She says that the captain even retaliated against her for months after the alleged assault before firing her in May of 2023. The civil complaint also includes photos of apparent bruises on Omarky's arms, which she says were caused by Christian Combs. And in this civil suit, she accuses him of assault, battery, sexual assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Now, Natalie, before I get into the allegations surrounding Sean Combs, because he is a named defendant too, what do you make of those allegations?
Well, I think it's a very serious allegation, and one
You know, the rapper Eve said Trump tried to get her some of her drink. Said she had that one nigga for you. That one drink said no, came back to the shit. Passing out. You know, the home girl from the mother. They understand what was happening. You know, watching the like that. She was drinking the same. You know, Money going already said that shit already to the interviews. You know, nobody hearing that nigga. You know? And they had special models in for him and then special models for the female. If you would ask him, like, nigga, why would you participate in that shit? You a fucking probation officer. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, you let that shit happen. You can't say shit. Oh, man. You know, man. They take me that hard to get no food, cat. Hey, this just don't like me, man. He had a terrible conversation. He one nigga that me and girl like, look, watch this. He said his eye, but the feet ain't come out. Right. Get home, bro. Like, what? You don't like that? Or he be like, you want to race? I'm not gonna be doing racing. Want to play the game with me? He said on the road thing. Oh man. And then you would think on the other side, industry friends to introduce them to their sister. Nah. And even if he gay, he couldn't find a gay man that like him. He got a drug him too. He's just an unlikable nigga. Watching on live and shit on that mother camera. I mean, Mike Unit on this one. I got a couple people watching. People going in and out. They got my camera covered up, so they just watching the stream. You know what I'm saying? Do something. You know what I'm saying? And not everybody knows too. Cat Williams was one. You know what I'm saying? When he did that interview, that Palm Center interview that kicked off so much shit. You know what I mean? I know he wasn't playing. Then what you call that nigga crazy. You know what I'm saying? He's crazy. He hating on Puff before the shit came up. The Marshall was casting on it. You know, he was saying how Puff wanted to fuck with him. Like, man, you got to tell Puff no. You got to tell him no. You're like, why, Cat? Why you got to tell him no? He ain't Cat Williams. Getting one of them look. You don't know. See, why you gonna pull up? Like, he's swinging down the way. I don't see why gay men said that he gotta hide his gayness. Like, all the other gay people don't like these people who ain't gay don't care. You know what I'm saying? It ain't gay business. It's haha funny. Okay, but then everybody move on to be like. That's on them. You know what I'm saying? And what was he worried about? Don't do nothing you were saying. You know what I'm saying? Or you know it's wrong. You know what I'm saying? Why is he even doing it? Then you feel like you gotta hide this shit. You know what I'm saying? He shouldn't be doing it. You know what I'm saying? I promise you, if I was gay, I wouldn't give a fuck. No. You know, man, that's my man. You know what I'm saying? Allow me to say something that I am. You know what I'm saying? That's what it is. That's what it is. You know what I'm saying? How I fit. You know what? That's nothing that puts you through on this shit most likely too. Because you want to see who else gay. You know what I'm saying? When somebody doing some bullshit, want somebody else to do it too. You know what I'm saying? So they be a part of it too. You know what I'm saying? I didn't think about it. You know what I'm saying? Or there's something to stop the bullshit. Damn, I can't be a part of this. So this ain't like you know my stuff. You know what I'm saying? Damn, man, let these bitches get money. Oh, shit, nah, I ain't doing that. You know what I'm saying? Nah. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't know. I have no fun on my topic. You know, I know I'm not. Now, damn, so you can't all the way. What's wrong, man? Hey, you know what I'm saying? And that's some shit you don't do, man. The fuck? You know what I'm saying? And then you work for $1 billion, man. How many hoes running around out there figuring all that selling ass? You can't, you know what I'm saying? Damn, nigga, what you doing over there for? Now you about to get yourself a knife and busting a nut? Man, you dumb. You know what I'm saying? Stupid ass nigga. And most man is something. Look, man don't snitch because he knew these things in life in the minimum 20 years, right? That's the least he could get, right? And he gonna get convicted of some shit. He don't take people like that. She a witness of him saying he's sent around the world. So he guilty of all that shit off the top, right? You know you going up. Why did you stick around, man? Unless you know you got an ace in the home shit. Then, oh, I tell the feds, listen, no, come out, he's sticking around. We could have literally went to a place where ain't no extradition. You know what I'm saying? They can't bring them back. Like, they're not extraditing them back. You know what I'm saying? That's what Russell Simmons did. He live in Poly now. Poly has no extradition with the U.S. You know what I'm saying? So remember, he was almost a part of that museum. But he left the country. And then he stopped talking. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't around no more. You know what I'm saying? Why is it fucking flames all over the hot? You know he's guilty. Is he trying to save face? He's trying to, what? You know, man, you're going down. Why do you run? You know what I'm saying? You're not thinking this shit. That's what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? Right. And you know he hooks on drugs. You know when withdrawals coming, that's the worst place to go to withdraw. Jail. They're not going to do shit for you. You know what I'm saying? So, why did you stick around? You say you're in a private jet with all the dope you want, you have to fuck them out of it. Right. So he must want to be about to tell us some people. You know what I'm saying? You don't care what lawyer he got. You ain't beating some of these charges. Some of you may beat, some of you just not beating. Like 29, this is what we need. It's hard to plead a case when whatever. If a witness is get on that stand and saying he did it, how you gonna beat a witness? Pointing your ass up. You know what I'm saying? And even in his case, if he wasn't guilty, how the fuck would you just there testify for yourself? If I ain't doing shit, I'm gonna stand for myself and talk for myself. I ain't shit that big. You know what I'm saying? They lying on me. Let me create reasonable doubt. You know, when it got, it was because of us. Or shit, I put my face. Voted nothing to the attorney, I'm gone. You know what I'm saying? I had to keep that case from, you know what I'm saying? Or, with my shoes on, I know I did it. You know what I'm saying? I had witnesses corroborate that. You know what I'm saying? Then what he was saying didn't matter to me. You know what I'm saying? Right. Because me and all these other people saying, otherwise. You know, so insurance. You know what I'm saying? Got him right there. Oh, it's over. Yo, both songs, finish it good. The dude said that, yo, got his brother, 6 year old, $100,000. Boom. They said they FaceTime and the drummer, shoot. After the phone, he said, his name Zip. Zip is Zip. So, $100,000. He said, right out of the view. And then FaceTime, he said, Zip, right? He said, I'm gonna give it so that's supposed to be $100,000, right? Yeah, nigga, $800. You did, man. Yeah. I think they kicked his uncle just to get some type of thing. He had no family going back there. So he took some money from him, going to Johnny gonna say. You know what I'm saying? And his ass is at oxygen food. You know what I'm saying? You know, people, you know what I'm saying? Somebody, you supposed to get somebody $100,000, give $800. That's what man. You know, check out this top platinum selling artist, a real nigga rapper, damn hit rapper, man. It's a damn good music. $800, man. Drawing niggas some hoes, you can't take words, you know what I'm saying? Cause niggas physically ain't getting shit to them, niggas. Like that, I can't shit with that shit. You just talking shit. That's, come on, man. Y'all small-minded. You better think that words are murder the nigga. You know what I'm saying? Also, y'all rappers. You know what I'm saying? And this was rap, man. You know what I'm saying? You can't handle the rap. Can you get the fuck out of rap? You know what I'm saying? That's bitch as fuck. You know what I'm saying? Okay, keep this nigga far from Boston. You want to kill him and bring everybody down. Now that nigga dead, 2 niggas dead, 3 niggas head in jail. You know what I'm saying? You know, got the image all fucked up. You know what I'm saying? Come on, bro. You feel like how the Tupac murder brought down Jeffrey. Once Tupac died, Jeffrey was over. You know what I'm saying? And then let's pop like on Puff and say, he got killed. You know what I'm saying? Come on. So ain't worth the headache. You know what I'm saying? Nigga lied. My nigga lied. Some of see, I was there some racing shit too. You know what I'm saying? Nigga, I can bump. That's a little ride. You know, trying to win money there, you feel. You can go scared of the folks. You really want it. Nah, he looking crazy. You know, 5 days, and then for phone. You get $30 million to start bad boy and all of that. Right? Just keeping all the money behind Piggy. And then found out Piggy was robbing him. He about to leave them niggas and keep on and on. So he really the head. If it was a mob, he the boss. You know what I mean? That he's bringing that money. You know what I'm saying? So you feel Piggy, he was money. And that's he feel he became money. That's the only nigga fucking song. Just so I James, CMZ, right? It's what do you think about this subject stuff, right? You know how niggas do it. Who? That bum back on you, and that work for you, who? I'm gonna be a good. You let me know I ain't got nothing to do with that nigga. You know what I'm saying? I don't even know that nigga.